This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reif Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
I don't think this team lets itself, bring out of the groove, I guess. I think this is we're doing things. We've built a culture that is built on consistency, and that's not going to change whether we had a break or not.
Let's hope so.
That's what you want to hear. Yeah.
Right?
That's exactly what you want to hear if you're a Lightning fan.
One of the more consistent players, not only for the Lightning, I think, but if you were to pull a bunch of players this year at their position, J.J. Moser would be back and would be at the top of that list. So good to hear him. Lightning back in action tonight, partner, against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yes.
The Maple Leafs have a lot of ground to make up. Nick Alberga, who broadcasts and does a lot of work for the Maple Leafs, will be joining us around 12:30 to talk about what it all means tonight for the Maple Leafs and how well they're going to have to play to make up some ground.
Yeah.
And get back into this.
Look, Toronto has had a lot of injuries. Now, the Lightning have had a lot of injuries, and the Lightning are way ahead of Toronto in the standings. So this is not to say that the Toronto Maple Leafs can use the injuries as the be-all, end-all excuse of where they are right now, which is on the outside looking at as far as the playoffs are concerned. But if you recall, Greg, in the first meeting between the teams, which was played in Toronto in early December, let's say, the Lightning, it was their fourth straight regulation loss. And then they went to Montreal the next night and ended that losing streak. They lost 2-0. The Leafs scored a first-period goal from Morgan Rielly. They got an empty netter from Matthews at the end of the game. The goalie for Toronto in that game was Dennis Hildeby.
Yeah.
It's the third-string goalie. So they didn't have Stolars, who was out with an injury. They didn't have Joseph Woll at that point either. So, or maybe they had Woll and he was backing up. I can't remember exactly what the deal was with Woll, but he took some time at the beginning of the year for personal matters. So he might not have been back at that point. All I remember is that Hildeby was the goalie. Now both goalies are back. Stolars is going to get the start tonight. Stolars missed 33 games, some kind of nerve issue. They've had other injuries. Chris Tanev, who was arguably last year their most consistent defensive defenseman, has basically missed the whole year. And one of their other top defensemen on the right side, Brandon Carlo, missed a chunk of time earlier this year too. So those are significant injuries. Nylander missed some time, I would say, shortly before the Olympics. He missed some time, he came back, he missed some more time, he came back, and then he played the final 2 or 3 games before the Olympics. You pull him out of the lineup, that's a big loss. So look, you can look at Toronto's season and say they've had a bad year for injuries, but so have a lot of other teams, including the Lightning. And we just keep coming back to that. What the Lightning have been able to do in the face of their injury problems has been one of the biggest reasons why they are where they are in the standings. No one's going to shed any tears in Lightning land over the Maple Leafs injury struggles.
Right.
But it's the reality of the situation, and Nick can probably fill us in a little bit more on how these injuries have affected what the Leafs want to do. They're one of the worst defensive teams in the NHL this year, 27th in terms of goals allowed per game. How much of that is missing both goalies for, different periods of time? How much that is missing Tanev, who's just a rock-solid defenseman, blocks a ton of shots, just settles everything down? Maybe that's part of it, but you have to get the job done. They've been a bad 5-on-5 team, too, because their penalty killing's been pretty good, 5th. So when you're 27th defensively, but 5th in penalty killing, that means you're having some defensive problems 5-on-5. They didn't against the Lightning in the first meeting. They won 2-0, as I mentioned.
You can't defend, you're not going to go far. And what's been the main reason the Lightning have been able to be one of the better teams this year? We know they can score, and we've seen that a lot this season, but they've defended. Yeah. They've defended really well. Even when they were losing some games, they were finding ways to keep the opponent 3 goals or less. And offense is going to come and go. I think it's like that in every sport a lot of times. And if you can consistently give an effort and be pretty structured, it's a great formula. And this year, for whatever reason, I don't know why. Maybe it's a lot of different factors. Maybe it's the fact they've had injuries and they've had guys come up who have played a simpler style. That's a 30,000-foot view, partner. I'd have to talk to the coaching staff about that and ask, is that part of why this team has been so committed defensively and so good? Maybe there is a simplicity to their game because of so many new guys coming up and wanting to fit in. Could be just, guys or whatever reason this year, and they understand, look, we want to get beyond the first round, and the way we do that is we got to defend really hard. And let's focus on that at the start of the season and build those good habits, and let's see what happens. I'm not sure what it is, other than I also think they're having some guys perform at a very high level, and the guy we heard at the beginning of this show, J.J. Moser, might be at the top of that list. I mean, we can talk about Andrei Vasilevsky and how well he's looked this year, and that's a fair point. I mean, if you were to come back and tell me he's the best goaltender in the game right now, I think a lot of people would agree with you. But the way that J.J. Moser is, in addition to the fact that McDonough and Hedman have missed time, makes him even more important to this team, I think, and why I jokingly said he should get a vote here and there for the Norris Trophy, considering how well he has played, and more importantly, maybe who has missed time on the back end for the Lightning. He's been rock solid. And so a lot of factors. I tend to maybe some newer guys coming up, partner, and keeping it simple. But I also acknowledge that some of the guys that they're leaning on this year, particularly Moser and Radish, they're playing at an elite level.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure anybody had that on their bingo card before the season began. So,
well, no.
That's where I am
this
on
backs up, how are you going to overcome injuries to key players?
Yep.
That's why it's a little bit of a surprise that, Darren Radish is where he is. J.J. Moser
Correct.
is where he is as far as, the one stat that you can look at is plus minus. I saw something in the notes, I think, that Ben Pierce had, that Moser is one of the top players in terms of plus shot attempts, which, again, kind of speaks to possession.
Yeah.
So, he's been on the ice for like 200 more shot attempts for than against. So how do you attempt a shot? You have to usually be in the offensive zone. So that means that when he's out on the ice, the Lightning are not spending a lot of time in the defensive zone. Conversely, they are spending a lot more time in the offensive zone. I'm just going to go back to the Olympics for a second, because I know Cale Makar has gotten some flack, not so much in the U.S., but more in Canada, for what he tried to do on the overtime winner that Jack Hughes scored. So if Makar doesn't go for that puck and just backs up, concedes possession to Jack Hughes, who's going for the puck, it's not an odd man rush in all likelihood. Maybe it's a 3-on-2, but it turned into a 3-on-1 because Makar went for it and didn't get it and was basically pointed in the wrong direction. This is who Cale Makar is, though. This is what makes, in part, Cale Makar Cale Makar. He is, when people say Cale Makar is the best defenseman in the NHL, or as Brian said on the show yesterday, he referenced Quinn Hughes is the closest thing he has seen to Bobby Orr since Bobby Orr played, just the way he moves around the ice. I think Makar and Quinn Hughes, they aren't identical in how they skate and shoot and pass, but they are considered two of the best defensemen, if not the two best defensemen in the NHL, primarily based on what they can do with the puck. Passing the puck, shooting the puck, skating with the puck, putting the other team on alert defensively. They are extremely difficult to defend. But it is not shocking to me that Cale Makar tried to make a play to win the gold medal for his team.
Yeah.
And if he's going to get criticism for not being more defensive, then, it's 3-on-3. You can go one of two ways. You can be very conservative, and we see that sometimes in the NHL, where nobody tries to really go for it, and they don't want to make a mistake, or you can be aggressive. So if you're aggressive and it works, no one complains, right? This is my point. We have bandied this about. I do think it's time for the NHL to introduce 2 awards, a second award for defensemen. Because J.J. Moser is not going to get many votes for the Norris Trophy. He's not. So, I mean, there's no award that says this award is going to the best forward. We have lots of awards that can fall for forwards. Most goals, most points. MVP usually goes to a forward. Not always. Last year it didn't, but usually goes to a forward. We have best defensive forward. Usually the Lady Byng goes to a forward for whatever reason. Is it so mind-boggling to suggest that we have 2 awards for defensemen? We have the award that fits the bill of the Cale Makars and the Quinn Hugheses and even the Darren Radishes, who can really put the other team in an uncomfortable position based on what they can do offensively. I'm not suggesting that Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar are poor defensively, but let's be honest, neither one is the biggest guy in the world. If they get into a puck battle, they might lose that puck battle. People are pointing about Makar, kind of got walked a little bit by Matt Boldy on the first goal that the U.S. scored. The strength of his game has to do with what he does with the puck. That's the strength of his game, and he does it maybe better than anyone else in the NHL from the blue line, maybe with the exception of a guy like Quinn Hughes. What J.J. Moser does, what Jacob Slavin does, what some other guys can do, what Ryan McDonough has done through the bulk of his career is different, but it's not any less important. And you can cobble together some numbers to illustrate how important having a shutdown defenseman on your team can be. So if we had a defensive defenseman award, I can tell you right now, Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar are not getting votes for that award.
No,
because it's not really the strength of their game. I'm not throwing shade at them. I'm just speaking.
No, but
facts.
I think it would.
Jacob Slavin would get a lot of votes. Jacob Slavin's not getting a lot of votes for the Norris Trophy.
That's fair. And it would call out what it is. It would call out what Hughes. It would call out what Makar are. They're offensive juggernauts.
Yeah.
It's okay. And I think you made 2 valid points that we've discussed before, but I think it deserves addressing again. One, we live in a metrics era. There's no reason why you can't have the metrics to back up the nomination. You didn't have that 25 years ago, so maybe you can make the case it was more of the eye test. I was going to pick Chris Chelios as the best defensive defenseman. Again, that's more reputation. But now, you have metrics that allow you how good J.J. Moser is blocking shots while he's making an omelet in the kitchen. You have all of these things, so there's no reason why you can't have it. And I think that's fair to point out. I also think the minute you have a defensive award for an offensive player, you can have that for a defenseman as well. It doesn't make any sense.
The same holds true. At least unless they change the way that they play substantially.
Yeah.
Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon are not winning a Selke trophy.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's okay to say that,
Yeah, it is. And I'll be pretty frank, and let's be very clear on this. Who does the voting for the Selke? Do you know?
The Selke is the writers.
So I'm going to let's assume the writers would have a say, best defensive defenseman. I think that's a little bit harder to understand. The intricacies of being a defensive defenseman. You got to know what you're seeing out there.
Yeah. And
so that's a difficult job, I think, for a hockey scribe to do. I think when you look at a defensive forward, it's the face-offs. Yeah. It's I'm taking the hard minutes. I think when you're a defensive defenseman, stick on puck. Things like that you've got to be really watching. That's harder to do as somebody who's not following more than one team. That's very difficult to do.
Well, you know what, Greg? We're just having a groundbreaking show. Not that we haven't introduced the Defensive Defenseman Award, but the players vote for the Ted Lindsay Award.
They do.
Which is not technically MVP. It's kind of best player, but that's a player award that is voted on by the players. When you have the players vote for the best defensive defenseman, I think they would know. They would know who's extremely difficult to make a move against, to score against, to get chances against. I mean, whether you're talking about writers or broadcasters, and I mean, we're guilty too when we vote for the Jack Adams. It's not like we're seeing every other coach all the time, but players are on the ice competing against every other player in the league. I think they have a pretty good finger on the pulse of who's doing what.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a hard enough time, advocating taking a broken stick off the ice. So I don't know if during play, I don't know if we're going to be able to move the needle on getting new awards. And maybe there are too many awards as it is.
And quite frankly, I'm surprised the players don't push for it, because that's something you can add in negotiations.
Yes,
too.
absolutely.
So I don't know why that's not more prominent, but I don't worry about those things that we really can't control.
Just curious. I'm going to look it up right now. Off the top of my head, I don't know if Scott Stevens ever won the Norris Trophy, because he would have been a guy. I mean, he never had. I mean, it's certainly maybe after his first couple of years, never had a lot of points.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. My inclination is saying no. Yeah, I was going to say no.
So Scott Stevens, maybe a little bit of a different player than a Moser or Slavin, a lot different player. Thunderous hits, right? He was like combining Slavin and Trouba.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Scott Stevens was both, right? Hall of Famer. Never won the Norris Trophy. And arguably one of the best defensemen
no doubt.
ever to play.
Do you have the list in front of you? I'm curious.
I just looked up Scott Stevens'
if you have
Norris
the list,
Trophy, and he never won it.
If you can pull up the list before we get to some questions, Nick Alberga coming up at 12:30, I'd be curious over the last how many years, how many of those players you can make the case are actually pretty good defensive defensemen too.
Yeah.
I think that's
well. I mean,
fair.
Hedman won it, and Hedman is Hedman is viewed. He's not a physical defenseman, even though he's big. Yeah. But what I've heard players say about him is that his reach, like, it's very hard to get around him.
For sure.
When you are in the offensive zone and he is defending.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair. Like, did Chara ever win the Norris?
All right, I'm going to go to the list here.
See, I would look at Zdeno Chara, and I would say, honestly, how many better defensemen were there than him?
Right.
When he was
so
in his
going
peak.
back, and this is reverse order from last year. Cale Makar,
Offense.
Quinn Hughes, Eric Carlson, Cale Makar, Adam Fox, Roman Yossi, who is a pretty well-rounded
not bad
defenseman.
But more offense.
Mark Giordano won it in 18-19. I think he had a great finish for Calgary that year.
He did.
Hedman won it in 17-18.
Yeah.
Then going back, Burns,
Offense.
Doughty, who just plays a lot.
Doughty would be a good one. Yeah, Doughty would be a good one.
But I think he got it more for offense than defense. And then Eric Carlson again. And then you have Duncan Keith. I think Duncan Keith is probably the
closest.
Along with Hedman, maybe the closest. But he was an offensive guy. Subban, Carlson
guy.
again.
Wait, Carlson, how many Norris trophies did Carlson win? Three so far?
Yeah, and then you go to Lidstrom. So Lidstrom is to me is probably the best example of a guy who is just exceptional defensively. Mm-hmm. But he also played power play. I mean, he got opportunities offensively.
Yeah, he was a
good
offensive
But that's going
player
back to 07-08.
Yeah.
And Lidstrom, so Lidstrom won the Norris Trophy in a 7-year span, excluding the lockout year. So in the other 7 years, both before and then after the 04-05 lockout, he won it 6 times. So he had the pedigree, right? And then Scott Niedermayer was also kind of a defensive defenseman, won it in 03-04. So I think we almost have to go back, let's be honest, 20 years, basically, almost 20 years before we look at the award kind of given to more defensive defensemen, but not necessarily strictly shutdown defensemen. Niedermayer and Lidstrom produced points as well.
They did. By the way, good run there of sweet players winning the Norris.
Yeah.
Right? Carlson, Lidstrom, and Hedman. You're talking.
Chelios won it. It.
Well, that would be
here.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. I mean, I think in
3
terms
times,
of
actually.
defensive prowess. Anyways, interesting comment. JJ Moser, Lightning being very good defensively. Toronto, maybe some problems there. And I think when you take a look at the two teams, there are some differences. That being said, Toronto plays the Lightning well. And this is
low.
not going to be not that it's going to be an easy game, but you factor in the layoff. This really would be up in the air. I have no idea, Dave, what to expect. By the way, we should mention, of course, if you're just joining us, John Cooper is going to be stepping away from the team for the next couple of games. His father passed away.
Yeah,
so that was announced. I mean, that's
John Cooper and his family, and he lost his mom a couple of years back as well.
So that's more important. Be with your family, obviously, but thoughts from our team here to Coop and his family. That's a tough one for sure. But they'll be playing minus Cooper today.
And Rob Zettler did meet with the media this morning, and we can tell you Point is in, Lilleberg is in, Destu is in, Hedman is in. They're going 11-7, which isn't shocking because, first of all, you have a bunch of players that haven't played in 2.5 weeks. Then you have Point, who hasn't played since mid-January. Destu, who hasn't played since their loss in Columbus, that game in which he got hurt, which was when, late January. And Lilleberg hasn't played since mid-December. So, and Hedman has been out more than in. So, I mean, just those three defensemen alone, I think it makes sense for them to go with 7D. Sorelli was in a regular jersey, though, today, which is great news.
That's a great sign.
Eric Erlinson asked Zettler about Sorelli. He's like, he had some contact today, but we're not quite there. But he said not tonight, probably not tomorrow, but maybe Saturday for Sorelli, which awful for him that he missed the Olympics, but the way the timing worked out, he had basically 2.5, 3 weeks to get over this injury. If it looks like he's going to be coming back as soon as Saturday, he really didn't miss many games for the Lightning.
I'm really excited to see Point.
You see Crosby's expected to miss a month, 4 weeks.
I didn't see that, but
I saw that.
We talked about it on the call or the show yesterday.
When
it wasn't going to be.
He was thinking about trying to give it a go. It seemed like it might have been not as long term an injury, but that I think was Crosby just trying to gut it out.
Will himself to get on the ice.
Yeah.
That's a tough one, though. I mean, again, if we talk about the case why you shouldn't be playing in the Olympics, that's it. I mean, that's your best player, your captain. You're having a run that nobody anticipated. And, I mean, let's face it, partner. I mean, Crosby drives that bus, right?
Yeah.
And this isn't 2 games. That's a month.
When you've got, I said 6 weeks the other day. I think it's closer to 7 weeks, but that's more than half of the remaining time in the regular season. Now they're in a decent spot, so they might be able to hang in there, and then he returns if he returns on schedule and helps them down the stretch. But that's a tough one, certainly for the Penguins.
He's out. Mikko Rantanen and Kevin Fiala, who's done
Fiala,
for the season.
We knew,
right? Done for the season. But I mean,
Rantanen missed the bronze medal game.
Yeah,
but how bad is
he's going to be out
injury?
2 weeks?
2 weeks. Okay.
He's going to be out 2 weeks.
Dallas is in
done
a pretty
for the year.
Secure spot, though.
Right.
That Kings move to get Panarin now looks even more important because Fiala was one of the guys that could produce offensively for them.
For one of the few, to your point there. So, anyways, that is kind of where we are. We can get to some questions.
Yeah, we have Nick coming up.
We've got Nick coming up momentarily.
In about 5 minutes.
Rob says, I really like the makeup of this team. Only thing we're missing is a face-off guy. Is someone like Noel Acciari an option? Right-handed face-off guy, 55%. Great PK. Only question is if Pittsburgh would deal him.
I think you and I have talked about him.
I think they would.
A little bit. He would be more in the Glendening role than like we talked about Trocheck the other day. But I like Acciari. He's got a lot of playoff experience. He can kill penalties. He's good on faceoffs. I think the questions are twofold. First of all, would Pittsburgh be interested in moving him because they like him? Mm-hmm. He's providing that good play for Pittsburgh right now, which is in the mix to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And what would he be able to bring beyond faceoffs and penalty killing? And that is an unknown to me.
I just
haven't watched him play enough this year.
He's also not very fast.
Yeah.
at this point, and the Lightning like to play an up and down game. That doesn't mean every player is going to be Braden Point, but I also don't think you can be an anchor either.
Right.
Remains to be seen. Local Nomad says, because of the long layoff, could Vasi get the game tomorrow against Carolina as well?
Could he? He could. I would be surprised if they give it to him. I mean, Johansson has played well for the Lightning. Now, was Johansson's last game that game in Columbus? Has he played since then? I think Vasi played every game during the homestand so far, didn't he?
That's a good point.
From remembering right. So
Yeah.
Johansson hasn't played in a while. They're going to need to get him a game soon, I think. His next game will be his 100th in the NHL, talking about Johansson. I would think Johansson gets the game tomorrow. We do know Vasi's starting tonight, though. He was first off. It was an optional skate, but he was out there.
Let's see. Carter says, yep, been saying it for years. People need to stop calling Makar the best defenseman. He's a bit of a windmill in playing actual defense in the defensive zone.
All right. I have not said that.
I love that.
Maybe you say you've been saying it for years that Makar is, he may be, I mean, Quinn Hughes gives him a run for his money. And there may be some other guys who are extremely talented offensive defensemen. But I think you could make an argument that Cale Makar is the best offensive defenseman in the NHL based on everything he can do.
Yeah.
He is not known for being the best defensive defenseman, but that doesn't mean that he is a subpar defensive defenseman. He is an excellent defensive defenseman. He's just not one of the best defensive defensemen if we're separating the two.
Sure.
I mean, he can skate the puck out of trouble from the defensive zone. That's part of defending.
That's a
he
skill.
makes a great first outlet from the defensive zone. That is part of defending.
Yeah.
But I think there are other guys who can perform in that one aspect of defending at a higher level. And that's not, as I said, throwing shade at him. I certainly wouldn't call him a windmill. I mean, any team
That's great.
in the world, forget the NHL, in the world would like line up. If like first to the doorbell gets Cale Makar, there'd be like a mad rush, okay? So I did not say that he was a windmill defensively. But, you know, he has a little bit of the riverboat gambler in him. And on that play, in a 3-on-3 situation with the gold medal on the line, he gambled and lost. But that's part of who he is as a player.
Most of the time, he
And
makes
there's
the right play.
way more good than not good.
For sure.
In terms of what he can do.
And let's face it,
by being that way.
Most NHL executives who look at this thing a lot closer than we do because they can look at the analytics, if you were to give them the option between Makar and a defensive defenseman who to pick first, they're going to take Makar every single time.
I mean, how about Quinn Hughes in the overtime against Sweden?
Yeah.
He was out there for a while. One of the things you don't want to do in a 3-on-3 is get stuck out on the ice. Now, Quinn Hughes can skate and skate and skate and skate and skate. But I guess, you know, before he scored the overtime goal, but shortly before that, he waved off the bench. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm staying out here. And it all worked out, right? He got the puck. He scored the goal. But what if he got tired? I mean, nobody can skate forever. What if Sweden got the puck? Quinn Hughes couldn't get off the ice, and Sweden scores. People are like, why didn't Quinn Hughes go off the ice when he had a chance? That's what these guys, that's how they think, though. They're like, I'm going to make a difference here. That's really what we're talking about. And usually they do make a difference.
Makes sense.
I mean, that poke check between Makar and Jack Hughes, it could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like he had a horrific, we'll call it a pinch. Wasn't really technically a pinch, but you want to call it a pinch just so we can visualize like a little bit of a step up to try and win the puck. It's not like he wasn't there. He was there. His stick was there. It just, Jack Hughes was able to get there a smidgen earlier, like a smidge earlier, and poke it past him. But it was close.
We're efforting to get Nick Alberga on, who we'll be talking about the Maple Leafs in great detail because that's what he does, and we appreciate his analysis. Before we get to Nick and get him underway, Zebra says block shots, plus minus, PK minutes, and hits all could tell you who's at the top. I feel like a defensive defenseman would really appreciate getting this reward too. They are often overlooked. Well, that is true. They are. They're not overlooked by people within the hockey community.
No.
They're just not going to get the recognition from people outside of that space. And that is what it is. K-Bay says, hey, Dave and Greg, it's so good to be back and to be able to say it's game day. Hopefully you enjoyed your time off in the break. We did.
Yes.
K-Bay, we are glad that we are here for you. Rob says, I really like the makeup of this team. Only thing we're missing is a face-off guy.
I think we had this about the Nola Chari.
Right. Yeah, we got that. I'm sorry. I went
Nola Chari times 2.
You know, when you need a little bit more Noel, and that's all we got. With the trade deadline coming up, this is from Logan. Do you think Tampa makes a splash? Who could it be? Boy, we're going to get that question. It's going to be nonstop. Yeah. Do I think they make a splash? I do.
What's a splash?
Yeah, I do.
I mean,
what is a splash? Is a Trocheck a splash?
That would be a splash.
Yeah. That would be a big-time splash. Achari, would he be a splash? No, that would be a drizzle. But it could be a good one. Mark says, at what point do we look at Darren Radish being snubbed from Canada, being the main reason they lost to Team USA?
All right, I'm just going to give you my opinion about this whole
great.
Canada thing, okay? And Julian actually used this phrase, and I loved it when I heard him say it. So I'm going to hijack it and use it when describing what happened to Canada in this Olympic tournament. Julian was not saying that, the Lightning should have beaten the Florida Panthers last year. He said it after the series last year.
Yeah.
What he said, though, is like sometimes there's the randomness of hockey, and that can play into why certain games or certain stats go a certain way. And he may have actually been talking about the series, but he's used this expression to like, why did this happen the way that it happened? He's like, well, there was reason A, there was reason B, there was reason C, but reason D is just the randomness of hockey. There's a randomness to this sport, which way the puck goes. Mm-hmm. Does it hit a skate?
Yeah.
Does it hit the inside of the post and go out? Right. And there is something to that. Does the goalie make some saves that he has really no business making? Like he's putting himself in a position to basically get lucky.
Sure.
The Hellebuck save on Devon Taves. Hellebuck did everything he could, but let's be honest, he got lucky. Like Taves scores that 9 times out of 10. If it's along the ice, it's in the net. Hellebuck stuck his stick out, puck hit the stick. So Hellebuck did what he could, but there's a randomness to that play where Taves still could have scored. He didn't. So there was an element of randomness there that was how that play unfolded. I think Canada lost the gold medal because of the randomness of hockey. I don't think there was any issue with the roster makeup. I don't think there was any issue with the coaching staff, the management team. They were a terrific team with a superpower line, incredible depth, and grit. Now, let's not forget, they were down in all 3 games in the single game elimination. They were down to Czechia, they were down to Finland, and they were down to the U.S. So it wasn't like they just cruised to victory. They had to dig deep. That was a terrific team. And I saw some people like, John Cooper should have mixed up the minutes. He played the top line too much. That is absolute baloney. We talk about the best line in hockey. That was the best line in hockey.
Yeah.
Any hockey. You're going to play these guys.
They're
going to give you a chance to win. So I disagree with that. That's how. So the fan was asking about Darren Radish. I don't think there was one player taken that like a different decision would have made a difference. Now, would they have liked to have had Crosby in the gold medal game? Of course. Would they like to have had Point and Cirelli not get injured?
Sure.
Of course. But the lineup that they fielded was gold medal worthy. They just didn't win it.
No complaints there.
It happens sometimes.
It does. He's been waiting patiently.
Oh, sorry.
Always.
Nick should have talked about. Maybe Nick's
Well,
like,
we're bringing him in.
Canada messed this up. They messed that up.
We're bringing him in. Our good friend Nick Alberga.
Let's get your opinion, Nick. I feel that Canada had a gold medal worthy team, and there's no second guessing about like, well, they made this problem. Like, look, it happens sometimes. They got a little unlucky in a game in which, for the most part, they outplayed the opponent. And 3-on-3, it happens. You gave up a goal. I didn't think there was anything fundamentally wrong with Team Canada that would explain why they didn't bring home gold. But maybe you disagree. I don't know.
Firstly, I'm going to answer this, but gee, I'm looking at the bling on your hand right now. Is that a cup ring? I see
It is a cup ring. How about that?
Oh,
Ray? Do you like
what
that?
Is a cup? What is a cup ring?
What is
guys? What is round
That's a good
3 of
point.
the Stanley Cup? What is a conference final, guys? But to retort off what you were saying, I have chosen to take the high road in this country. There's a lot of consternation on social media the last couple of days about McDavid and McKinnon and misses and that. Like, that's hockey. I'm sorry to put it that way, but that's hockey. The States won. I don't care who the better team was. And that's the way I elect to tackle this gold medal final. I will add, too, like in interviewing some of the all-time greats, Americans, the last couple of days, Mike Modano, Jeremy Roenick among them, it was just time. Like, I think it's good for the sport. It's good for the game that the Americans won. And I think full value. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck was outstanding in that game, pound for pound, in my opinion, right there with Vasi for best goaltender on the planet. And he stole it. But last time I checked, that position is part of the game. And so if you're the Canadians, you get set for a couple of years now in the World Cup. And I think it just adds to the ambience of that tournament coming up in a couple of years here.
Boy, who would have thought Nick Darren Radish comments about Team Canada?
That's wild.
But, you know, we were talking about at the beginning of the show and how the Lightning have gotten to where they are this year. There have been a variety of reasons, but really it almost feels like two players that have stood out on the back end who have had really incredible years, Moser and Radish. I'm not sure anybody would have predicted it, but certainly the Lightning welcome it, don't they?
They do, and it's funny you bring up Moser's name. So when they struck the deal a couple years back, I actually texted Coop, but I don't know why I did this. I'm like, Moser's an unbelievable talent. Like, I think he's a really good player, and I noticed him early on with that organization, and all of a sudden it took a couple years, but that trade, I know Sergachev is tough to lose, but that trade looks pretty damn good. And I think it speaks to the coaching too. Like, I really want to be important in saying this and imperative in saying this. Like, John Cooper deserves a Jack Adams. Like, this is the year for John Cooper to win the Jack Adams Award, guys. Plain and simple. I think the body of work, the job he's done, filtering through all these injuries with Hedman and others alike from point. I mean, you guys see it more than most people in that market, and just the job he's done with that franchise, with that team. But certainly when you look at those two guys, like, those have been the massive standouts on the back end, considering all the injury concerns from McDonough to Hedman to Chernak, the list goes on and on. To have those two guys step up has been the story of this Lightning season, specifically Darren Radish, conveniently enough in a contract year, and perfect for this convo because where is he from? Toronto. The conversation started 2 months ago. If this guy gets to July 1, should the Maple Leafs look at Darren Radish? But right now, I'm choosing the high road again, and I'm just going to elect to praise the season that Radish has put together. I think Tampa's a really scary team as we get closer to the deadline. Yeah. They always make that move nobody expects, but even beyond that, again, you talk about teams that are positively impacted by the Olympic Games. Is there a team bigger than Tampa with the amount of guys who actually didn't go? And then on top of that, Kucherov got rest and Vasilevsky got rest. This is massive for them, man.
So the Lightning are a team that has had a lot of injuries and thrived, in part because some of the guys you just talked about have taken on expanded roles. They brought up some players, and it has really clicked. Other teams have had lots of injuries and done pretty well. Toronto's had a lot of injuries. And at this point, the Leafs are on the outside looking in as far as the playoff picture is concerned. How much of their struggle this season is tied to the injury component, and how much of it is kind of separate from that in your mind?
I would say 60-40 to the latter. I think injuries have played an impact in where this team's at. 25 games left, as you guys know. They're 6 points out of a playoff spot. It's really 7 because Boston holds a tiebreaker here with the Maple Leafs. They've owned them, surprise, surprise, again this year. But I look back to the first 25, 30 games of the year where the Leafs actually look genuinely disinterested, where they rather be anywhere else but play hockey. And it was mystifying. It was concerning. Craig Berube almost lost his job because of it. Ultimately, Mark Savard, who was their power play coach, lost his job. And weirdly enough, this team went on a crazy run and then came back to reality. And then after or prior to the deadline or the Olympic break, they got hot again. So I lean back to like if the Leafs go on and miss the playoffs, which is a high probability right now, at least in my opinion. I think it's just so difficult right now in the Eastern Conference to make ground. I look back at those 25, 30 games to start the year where they looked bored and they looked like they didn't want to be there. And it was really confusing because I think that team had a lot to prove, and this team has a lot to prove considering what transpired last summer, losing Mitch Marner and some of the changes they made. The goaltending situation hasn't been as steady as it was last year. So there was reason to play. They didn't play, and I think ultimately it cost them a chance to make the Stanley Cup playoffs, plain and simple. The injuries have been a thing, but it's not the big story for me.
Conversely, would you say the Lightning are the biggest story this year?
Yeah, like
with everything you just mentioned with injuries. And hey, is this team, Nick, has the window started to close? It feels like the Lightning have said, you know what, we're going to really lift this window back open and wide open.
Yeah, and I like some of the moves, the subtle moves they've made in the last couple of years. Again, I'm very curious to see what they do. Like they're always sniffing around. Like I shocked to hear Tampa was at least intrigued by the possibility of the Breadman. No, it didn't happen. We don't know exactly what happened behind the scenes, but they're going to be involved. I think they understand, they comprehend their window. Vasi's had a great year. If they could only get Hedman back and healthy, like it's been a very disappointing season, I think, from a health standpoint for Hedman. Just hasn't looked himself. And it helps when Radish and Mosier have really stepped up, as you guys just talked about. But Kucherov, like nobody's talking about it really, but the first month, he looked like he was in spring training for baseball and just not really ready to play hockey. And then all of a sudden, boom, every game, 3 or 4 points, and looks like the Kuch of old. Jake Gensel's been great this year. Braden Points is ups and downs throughout this year. So was Cirelli. So for as crazy it is to suggest, like Tampa hasn't even played their best game, and lo and behold, you look at the standings right now and you look at the body of work. It's really, really impressive. And again, I think this is the time for John Cooper to win the Jack Adams.
I'm looking at the standings right now, Nick. 7 teams north of the border. We could see a postseason featuring only 2 of them.
Yeah,
Montreal and Edmonton. Do you think that is likely, and what would that mean to kind of the country's mentality about these 7 teams and where they are relative to everyone else in the league?
It's reality, Mish. I mean, I think it just shows you it is difficult to make the playoffs. Like Winnipeg for me is like the interesting one because they won the President's Trophy last year, and they possess a guy who won the Hart Trophy and the Vezina back-to-back in Connor Hellebuck, and they just haven't put everything together. And maybe it's losing Nikolai Ehlers. Maybe it's, having no depth scoring. I mean, there's reasons why they're in this predicament, but they're 11 points out with 25 some odd games remaining. Like they're cooked, they're done. And it just shows you how hard it is to win in this league, where I think you look across the nation, specifically Calgary, didn't expect them to bounce back the way they did last year. I expected some regression. It's come. I think Edmonton's legitimate. We'll see what they do between now and the deadline, but they're the type of team that just needs to coast, much similar to what Tampa has done in recent memory, Florida, where they know what it takes to get into the playoffs, and they get there, they really turn things on. I would never count out McDavid and Draisaitl in crunch time in the playoffs. Those guys are money in the bank in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Ditto for Evan Bouchard. And then I think you look out east, like Ottawa's a team I thought would be right in the bubble. That's exactly where they're at. The Maple Leafs thought that they would take a step back, but I thought they'd be in a playoff spot. Obviously, it hasn't gone according to plan. So I think it was expected, at least for me, outside of maybe Toronto and Winnipeg. And I think the team that you brought up that intrigues me the most is actually the Montreal Canadiens. I think the world of that team. And I wonder if they're going to pounce this year, but you look at assets, they have everything to play with. Like, they make the Dobson deal, which has been tremendous, but they're building something special in that team. And, I'm intrigued to see if they go big game hunting at this year's deadline or let the game come to them in the offseason and the next year. But I think Montreal will make the playoffs, and I think they're going to be a really difficult out if they can get a save, which you can make that claim about most teams in this league.
Nick Alberga joining us here. What do you make of the Eastern Conference in general? Do you think this is something that goes through the Atlantic, or do you feel like, it's top heavy, pretty much parity all the way around? How are you looking at the Eastern Conference in general?
I think it's wide open. And I hate saying that because I'm a big supporter of the Lightning. I think they're a great team. I think they're one of the top teams, no doubt about it, in this Eastern Conference. But I think I look at one of those bubble teams and I'm like, what if I get in? Like, is there anybody truly in this conference that concerns me? Probably not. Tampa would be the number one team just because of the pedigree and the guys. And you got a championship ring on your hand for a reason. There's two of them out there in recent memory. So, like, that would concern me. I'll be honest, from the Maple Leafs perspective, and you guys know this, the Leafs have Tampa's number. This has been a story since they beat them in the playoffs a couple of years ago. They've won 5 in a row against them, 8 of the last 10. I actually think the Leafs would welcome a matchup against Tampa, believe it or not, in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't know if they're going to get there. And then I think Carolina is a team that I don't want to call them a pretender, but I do not believe in that crease. Brandon Bussey, what an incredible story, but what has he done in the Stanley Cup playoffs? Freddie Anderson's allergic to the crease in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I lived it in Toronto, guys. So until that team rectifies their crease, I don't think they're legitimate. So what I'm getting at, I think it's wide open, especially in a year where this has been a conference dominated by the state of Florida specifically, more so recently by the Florida Panthers. I don't think they're getting in. I think it's wide open, and that's why I think a team like Tampa should go for it. I think Montreal should go for it. I think Carolina should go for it. If there's a year where somebody could surprise, it might be this one because the Panthers are probably not going to get in here.
Trade deadline's a little over a week away, Nick, and look, you just said Toronto's probably not making the playoffs. The question is, did the GM believe that? Does the GM of this particular team that's outside looking in believe that we're not going to be able to make it, and therefore they go into sell mode? My question is, like, how busy is the trade deadline going to be? Are we going to have enough teams that are willing to sell to make it a compelling trade deadline?
Yeah, because you're right. A bunch of stuff's already happened. We saw the Kulak deal, but we saw like the Rasmus Anderson deal, Quinn Hughes earlier this season. Weirdly enough, like, I think there could be a lot of activity when it comes to the arms race in the Central Division. Like, Colorado is cooking something up. I don't know if it's Nazem Kadri going back there, but if you look at the finer details of that deal, Samuel Girard going to Pittsburgh, they cleared about $3 million in cap space. Like, they're cooking something. I think it's no secret they'd like to improve their top 6, maybe get a 2C, and I think Kadri's got the experience. He won there. So I think, to answer your question, everything goes up the middle and the chain reaction to guys going. Vinny Trocheck, Nazem Kadri. That's why I think you're hearing Elias Pettersson's name out there again. So, like, I'm curious in that standpoint because teams always want to bulk up the middle, but there's like 3 prolific names that are usually not available this time of year. And I think that throws like a curveball into the trade activities, like the arms race around that and who's going to get these guys. Like, I think to speak to the Central, like, Dallas needs to do something because Colorado's there, because Minnesota's there. And like, it's going to be a dogfight in the first 2 rounds to decide who moves on to the conference final from the Central Division. And I think, it would be smart for teams who are on the bubble, we'll say this, like the Maple Leafs, and I agree with you, Mish. I don't think they're going to go, we're full seller mode, but I think it would be smart for like a retool or a hybrid, whatever phrasing you want to call it. Maybe you subtract guys, but you add guys that could help you in the long run. It would be smart for one of these teams to step up and be like, hey, we're selling. We understand we're 4 or 5 points back, but there's not really a market for a lot of players. So let's create a market. Let's create desire. And we rarely see that in this league because everybody's just trying to make the playoffs. I mean, for the Maple Leafs perspective, it's a bit bewildering, right? Because I think we're at the point in the Matthews era, if you will, where it's like cup or bust. So if this team is legitimate and they want to make the playoffs, okay, you're into the playoffs. Do you conceivably think you have a shot of winning the cup? And I think I can safely say right now, this team is not winning the Stanley Cup this year. Sadly, this is not how general managers think, especially when you humanize situation. They're trying to keep their jobs, as you referenced.
Nick, it should be an interesting game tonight. Where can people catch your work, read your work? Where are you?
Leafs Morning Take at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Hit that like button, that subscribe button while you do so. You can subscribe there, and wherever you find your podcast, Leafs Morning Take, just search it. We'll show up. And still looking. All I got is this ring, guys. It's a fantasy.
Is that it from
hockey.
Cereal Box or what?
No, somebody actually dating back to my days at Sirius XM NHL Network Radio, and since we're talking about it, rest in peace, Boomer Gordon. I'm sure both were on him with him. I worked with him, lost his courageous battle to cancer on Monday. But this dates back to my time at Sirius XM. One of the listeners sent me like a mock ring for winning our fantasy title. So I wear it sometimes on the fantasy podcast I do. NHL
Why not?
Fantasy on Ice. Yeah, it's like my cup ring.
You look, the bling looks good on you, man. I appreciate
you too,
that.
brother.
All right. Well, Nick, we appreciate it, bud. We'll do it again soon. And thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
You got it.
Thanks, Nick.
There he goes. Nick Alberga. Always appreciate when Nick comes on and breaks it down with us. Good dude. And definitely tuned in to what's going on in
Absolutely.
Toronto. And I can remember, when I started doing stuff for the Lightning, listening to Nick on Sirius XM NHL Radio on my way down. And he was part of that crew that does a great job. I did not know that about Boomer, by the way.
Yeah, I saw that earlier today.
Geez.
I was gonna bring it up later in the show.
Goodness, I feel like it's.
I knew that he had been ill because he hadn't been on the air for a while. He worked with Phil for a time. They did a show together. When Phil did shows on Sirius, which going back a few years.
I feel like we're seeing just a lot in the movie space. So many people are passing away, and it's like, what's going on here? But it is what it is. Dave says Nick was a great interview. Thanks for that. He is.
Yeah, he always brings a little flavor to.
He does. He knows how to look.
Lunch.
He knows how to spice things up for sure, and we appreciate that about him. Lightning getting set to take on the Leafs. 7:40 start. We're going to be, on the airwaves.
TNT broadcast tonight.
TNT broadcast. So,
by the way, I saw Brendan Burke this morning, and I confirmed what I suspected because he told me it was the case. He did some of the Olympic games. I said, "You weren't over there, were you?" He's like, "No." He called the games that he did off the monitor. Now, Kenny Albert, Eddie Olczyk, Brian Boucher, they were clearly there, right? They were on site, but I think Brendan Burke did some games with TJ Oshie. They did it off a monitor in a studio here, like in the United States. And I said, was that the case for most sports? He said, yes. So I can tell you, because I've called games off a monitor. It is not the same as calling it in person, right? And then I think about like the people that were doing skiing or, the figure skate competition, like the announcers were there, and if you watched it, you saw them. And Brendan mentioned speed skating was on location, but a lot of the other sports, they're basically beholden to what the screen is showing them, right? It's very difficult, and I have a lot of respect for the announcers that did that, but it also makes sense from a logistical standpoint that however many sports there are in the Winter Olympics, they're not going to fly everybody over there. He even told me a lot of the production happened on this side of the Atlantic. A little behind the curtain stuff there.
Yeah,
for
interesting.
The fans.
How about that? Things that you don't know, and now that we know, it's good stuff. Do we want to take a few more questions?
Yeah. What do we got left? We got about
a
7
few more
minutes.
Yeah, Bolts fan. This was just recapping. I think it's nice to think that Johnny Gaudreau was with Team USA all Olympics, especially in that final game. That was
and a couple of the players played with him at the NHL level. Matthew Tkachuk was his line mate in Calgary. Werenski was his teammate in Columbus. Apparently they were very close. But a lot of these players kind of came up. They didn't all play on the U.S. national team, but like there was intersection there, right?
Yeah.
And I think even if they didn't play with Johnny Gaudreau at the NHL level or in college, he played at BC, they probably crossed paths at some point. Maybe they played on some national teams together. So, his impact was felt certainly by that team. And it was really wonderful that they even had his jersey up last year at the Four Nations. They hung his jersey in the locker room. So.
you find inspiration from various places, and Johnny Gaudreau obviously is still with many people in the hockey community. So pretty cool that the U.S. was able to do that. Rick says, "Let's go. I've missed Dave so much." I tell you what, we've all missed Mish and Phil. Phil had a birthday not too long ago, right?
Phil had a birthday, yep.
Which was
I
pretty
sent him a
cool.
text, happy birthday. He wrote back, thanks, see you on the 25th. So I'm like, okay. He's got it marked down.
He is
By the way,
ready.
with this long break,
Yeah.
I mean, usually when you're in it, like every other day, games, you're on top of everything that's been going on. I had to refresh my memory a little bit. Kucherov's on a 10-game point streak.
Yeah.
He's got points in 20 of his last 21.
Yeah.
Vasilevsky's on a streak of 16-0-1. The Lightning, and this is truly one of these, I'm going to use this word, dumb. This is a dumb stat, but they have the Lightning on a 9-game home winning streak, but that does not include the Stadium Series game. They're calling that a neutral site game. I'm sorry, that's dumb. Okay. That was a home game. That was one of their 41 home games.
Yeah.
I know the league ran it, but they played 40 at Benchmark, or they will play 40 at Benchmark International Arena, 41 away from Benchmark International Arena, and their win against the Bruins counted as a home win. It's not like they have a separate category for neutral site wins. Anyway, if you include that game, which I do, that's 10 straight wins in the city of Tampa. Let's say that. So they have some incredible numbers coming in. Radish is on a 6-game point streak, which ties a career high for him, which he set earlier this year. Oliver Bjorkstrand's on a 3-game goal streak. He went into the Olympics on a little bit of a hot streak. So hopefully he can keep that going.
Who would have?
Anyway, some of the stuff that I wrote down this morning, I was like, I didn't remember this. So obviously I didn't commit it. Obviously, basically embedded in my brain. So I'm glad I was able to go back and look at the notes and see all that stuff.
I forgot this too because we've been away for so long. Reif Rum.
Yes.
Enjoy some tonight. Smooth, versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Reif Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reif Rum by name, go Bolts, and enjoy responsibly.
One other note on Toronto, Greg, and we can make this a point of discussion if we need to tomorrow. Toronto Maple Leafs are the number one team in the NHL in faceoff percentage. And they have two of the top guys individually in the league in Matthews and Tavares. So we'll see how the Lightning do hanging in there. Of course, no Cirelli, no Paul tonight. Two guys that would normally take a fair number of faceoffs for them, but Point is coming back. So
that's important. No doubt about that. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for us here on the show. Glad we were able to get to a lot of questions today. Also, Nick Alberga joined us. We always appreciate that. And we've got the game tonight. We've got a game tomorrow, and we also have our show tomorrow. So it's a travel day, though, for you, right? You're going to be
heading to the airport right after the game.
Right
but we'll
after
have
the
our
game.
show like normal.
Normal show, right? We'll go live, and we'll speak to
Back-to-back for the Lightning.
Yeah.
That's another area where they've excelled this year overall and in the first half. I think they're 8-1-1.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, in the first half of back-to-back. So this is back-to-back set number 11 this year. They don't have a lot left, but the ones they have left are coming up with some of these road trips they've got, including this would count as a road trip, right? Because they're going to Carolina tomorrow.
Partner, appreciate you, and I will talk to you tonight.
Talk to you tonight.
You got it. Thanks to Steve Ersnick again. Thanks to Nick Alberga. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.